Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. I'm super excited for this one for two reasons. One, because today we're going to be doing a questions and answers. I asked you guys to ask me any questions related to photography or film photography or whatever you wanted to know on my Instagram, and you guys came through with a ton of good questions, so we're going to try and get through a few of them here. The second reason why I'm super pumped for this video is that we hit 10,000 subscribers on this channel. I still can't really even believe it. I've had so much love from friends who have YouTube channels that have supported me, and so many of you that have come through and liked the videos and subscribed. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I still really can't even believe it. And I know 10K subs is not like a ton in the grand scheme of things, but it's something that I am super stoked on, and that is all thanks to you guys. With that in mind, I am going to be doing a giveaway on this video today. I'm going to talk more about it at the end of this video, but to celebrate 10,000 subscribers, I am going to be giving away this camera right here. I'm very excited about it. It is my Olympus Stylus, which is a 35mm point and shoot camera with a great lens. I'm going to be giving this away to one of you, so definitely stay tuned to the end of the video to see how you could win this camera. I purposely didn't read any of these beforehand because I just kind of wanted to give like an authentic answer. So yeah, I'm just going to go through them as I see them and pick them out. So the first question: there have been a few videos on the process of editing photos. What is your view on editing film, and what is your workflow? This is like a big discussion that people always talk about. I edit all my film. I don't think it's a big deal at all because it's not 1945 shots fired. So yeah, I edit all my film. Of course, I don't do too much to it, but I rarely am I ever going to get a film scan back from any lab that I'm not going to adjust the exposure or the contrast or just work with the basic colors. So yes, I do edit my film, and if you don't, that's cool too, but I don't think it's a big deal at all. And the second part of this question is, what is your workflow for editing your film photos? I'm a pretty simple guy. I just drag them into Lightroom and do the basic adjustments that I mentioned, such as highlights, exposure, contrast, shadows. Maybe I'll tweak the colors sometimes. And then I'll go into Photoshop very rarely. I'm not very good at Adobe software, so a lot of times I don't even know what I'm doing in Photoshop, but every once in a while, if I'm taking like a portrait, I will go in there and maybe retouch a portrait. Do you ever shoot black and white film? Answer is yes. I have a ton of photos that never are gonna see Instagram or this YouTube channel, probably for whatever reason, that are black and white, but I love black and white. I think black and white tells a very powerful just like narrative, and it conveys emotion so well. And so I love black and white. My favorite film is HP5, and I do shoot it pretty consistently actually. I just don't ever share it online, but yes, I'm a big fan of black and white film. What are your favorite places to travel for photography? First of all, California is huge on my list. I go to California at least a couple times every year of my life. I can't even believe that it's a real place, that people live there. So I love traveling to California. The light and the weather is always so beautiful there. I love Iceland too. I know that's kind of maybe controversial, but it got so popular there for a lot of the wrong reasons because people were just going there to get a ton of likes. But I will say in its defense, if you ever have the chance to go, it is one of the most incredible places in the entire world. You can be driving for 30 minutes and be in desert to a volcanic area, and it'll start snowing, and then it will rain, and then the sun will come out. It is just the most unique place I've ever been. The culture is so unique. The food is great. If you go in the summer, the sun never goes down, so you can shoot for 24 hours straight. And so it's hard for me to admit, but all of my close friends know that I absolutely adore Iceland. What is your go-to focal length for the Mamiya 7 and why? So for those of you that don't know, there are 5 lenses, I believe, for the Mamiya 7. 2 of them seem kind of strange, but the 3 lenses that you see the most for the Mamiya 7 are the 43mm, the 65mm, and the 80mm. I have owned the 65mm and the 80mm, and I have to say, for me, the 65 is just the go-to. The good news is that the 65 and 80 are not really that different, but the 43 for me, even though I haven't used it, is probably just a little too wide. So this will differentiate for each one of you because we all have personal preference, but for me and my point of view, I would recommend the 65. The next question is, how does one start looking for commercial film work? Well, me personally, I don't have the guts to shoot any commercial work on film, or at least not solely on film, so I have no answer for that. However, if you are looking for commercial work, it's just a pretty basic rundown of whatever work you're trying to shoot, build a portfolio, and then have some confidence, and send the email. The worst they can say is no. But I must stress this, that you can't have a ton of work on your Instagram or your portfolio and then send to a company that is not looking for that style of photo, if that makes sense. I see a ton of people trying to send and get work with brands or companies, and they don't take any photos that would actually be beneficial for these companies. Be cognizant of making sure that you have work that will be appealing to these companies when you reach out to do work for them. Favorite film, I hate to say it because it's a pretty standard answer, but if I had to pick one at the end of the day to shoot forever, it would just be Portra 400. You can't really beat it. Yeah, it's just that good. I will throw in kind of a bonus one. I would say outside of Portra 400, it would probably be Kodak Color Plus 200. It's just the cheap film that they have at my local photography store, and it's just a crazy good film for like $4 a roll, 35 millimeter. So outside of Portra 400, I would have to say Kodak Color Plus 200 is an amazing film. How would you describe your works? Instagram sellout travel photographer. What do you use for scanning your negatives? I don't scan a lot of my own work anymore just because of a time constraint. It's very time consuming. However, I do have an Epson V600 that if I do scan my own work, I do scan on that. It's not anything to write home about, but it's less than $200 used online, and you can get some pretty good results with some third-party equipment that I've used. And so, yeah, Epson V600 if I'm not sending off to a lab, but like I said, I don't really scan a lot of my own work currently. Do you want to pause and I was going to do something funny where I just hold up the scanner? Yeah, so this thing is what I use. So Epson V600. Also, I wanted to show you guys this. This question was not asked, but I think this is super important. The reason why this scanner is bearable for me, in my opinion, is because of third-party equipment like this. This is just a simple piece of glass that goes over medium format film that I purchased from betterscanning.com. This is not an ad. They didn't pay me to say this. It's just a guy who makes this glass in his house. So this keeps the film incredibly flat and gives you an insanely sharp image. The reason why I don't scan a lot of my own film is because I'm terrible with colors and I can't ever fix the colors. But I will say with this glass, I do get insane detail, like sharper even than when I send off to a lab. If I ever had a lot more time, patience, and could figure out color because of glass like this, I definitely would scan more at home. I do have his 120 glass and his 35 millimeter glass, betterscanning.com, if you guys are interested in making your home setup better. Do you ever rate your film to overexpose for a certain number of stops? No, I don't. I know this is popular, but this is kind of a cop-out, but the Kodak professional stocks that I shoot, generally being Portra, or even if I'm shooting Fuji Pro 400H, they're so forgiving that they can be underexposed or overexposed, and I can just fix it in post usually. So I don't do this, but I will say I have a lot of friends who shoot Portra 400 at 200, for example, and it looks great. So if you're into that, but I just have never felt the need to do that personally. Is developing your own rolls of film reliable? I think I'm reading that right. I don't develop my own film. I did develop film in a photography class in high school, like a decade ago almost, it seems like, black and white only. And surprisingly, it was a pretty easy process. And then I have a lot of friends who have gotten into developing their own film, and they all said it's actually a lot easier than you would think, and their stuff comes out fine. So I think developing your film is probably one of those things that feels like crazy scary, but with all the resources that we have these days, I would say just buy the kit and try it, because that's a great way to cut costs and have the ultimate control over your work. Hey Corey, just out of curiosity, have you ever had any issues with your T4 or T5 winding prematurely? Talking about the Yashica T4 or T5. I have not had that issue personally. However, I have had an issue with a Yashica T4 viewfinder. I have owned a few of them, but never the winding prematurely. Lou, you just barked in the middle of my answer. Lou appears. One thing I will say though about film cameras breaking is that I had such good luck the first 3 to 4 years I was shooting film. I would buy from anywhere and everywhere and everything always worked out fine. But as of like the last 12 months, I've ended up with so many cameras that have just had issues after a short amount of time. So please do your research. I would encourage ordering from Japan or very trusted resellers, because people can have the best of intentions, but some of these cameras are like 30 or 40 years old. So man, I hate that your camera has that issue, but I'm right there with you. I have a lot of cameras that have a lot of issues right now. I really love this question. Any tips to beginner photographers in small towns? I find it hard to find interesting compositions. Either the town is too boring or I'm just too used to it. I live in a small town myself, and so I know it's incredibly difficult in the social media age to see people who live in LA or New York or traveling all around the world taking these beautiful photos. And this is a real challenge. I probably could make an entire video on this, because this is somewhere that I'm definitely at right now, trying to get out in my own surroundings and just make work. But I do believe that there's incredible value in that and that everybody should do it. If you look at a lot of the great photographic work that we look up to that have really changed photography as an art medium, it is from people just photographing ordinary places that most people thought were mundane, but they found the beauty and the compositions and just the best stuff about it. And so I'm always reminded by looking at work that you should make work no matter where you're at. And not only that, nobody can tell the narrative of your small town like you can. I could come there, or maybe another photographer that you like could come there, but they don't know the town like you. They don't know the history. They don't know the spots to go to. They don't know the weather and how to shoot it, really. They just could never tell the story of your town like you can. I'd be hard pressed to believe that any town doesn't have good compositions. I think it's just a matter of putting in the work and driving around, and like you said, looking at the places that you've seen your whole life and finding ways to shoot them. So I'm with you, but I do believe you can do it, and you just have to figure it out. What inspires you? I don't know. I love good design, whether good design is in a cell phone or an article of clothing or good design that I see on a billboard. I just love good design. So I'm really inspired by design, I guess, because it's all around us, whether you're looking at a building or a car, or I don't know, design just shapes our world. And then also dealing with photography, with lines and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm inspired by design. Another thing that I'm inspired by is hard work. Always have been. I've never claimed to be the best photographer, and I know I'm far from it. I look up to so many of my friends, and I just think all the time scrolling Instagram, like, how did you make a photo that good? All of my photos are trash. But I've always known that whatever little success I have found is because I was willing to outwork the next person, whether that was searching a forum about film late at night or just trying to make it happen. And so whenever I see people just crushing it and putting the time in, just making things happen against the odds, man, that definitely gets me every time. So hard work for sure. Will you ever do a zine? I should have done a zine by now. I think I'm too scared to do a zine because it's like an actual commitment for making real work. And so I'm sure I will do one day. And I actually was planning to try and work on one this winter in Tennessee as it gets cold and nasty and the trees kind of get spooky and in the fog and stuff like that. So we'll see. I definitely want to do a zine. I just have to commit to it. So will I ever do one? Yeah, I'm sure I will, but haven't done one yet. But thanks for asking. That's cool that you seem to be interested in it. Does photography help with mental health issues? Kind of a deep question, but I'll just answer it. I definitely believe it can, for sure. Not to go too deep into my story because this channel is not about that, but I remember a time in my life where I was just going through a big transition, lost a lot of friends, had a big, heavy lifestyle change, and that's actually how I started taking photos in the beginning, because I just needed a hobby to get myself out of the house and distance myself from a lot of things that were just negative in my life. And so photography personally for me helped me with my mental health when I was pretty depressed when I was younger in college a lot. And so yeah, I think photography can be an incredibly positive outlook. And so it's not the end all be all. It's definitely not the cure for everyone, I don't think, but I definitely think it can help for sure. So yeah, shout out to photography for being a positive outlet for energy. What is the strap on the Mamiya that Willem was using? I've had a lot of questions about the camera straps that I have on all my cameras. They're from Welsh Mountain, which is just a company that some homies own. And yeah, it's just like a startup that some homies made in Pennsylvania. They make all the straps themselves. They have a ton of leather goods, and they hit me up when they started it and asked me if I wanted some. And so yeah, I rep all their camera straps on all my cameras. So Yeah, Welsh Mountain. For you, what is the best 35 millimeter camera? I've owned a lot of 35 millimeter cameras, from incredibly overpriced point and shoots to the Leica M6 with Leica glass to traditional 35 millimeter SLRs. And I have to say, for me, just straight up a 35 millimeter SLR with probably a cheap 50 millimeter 1.8, 1.4 lens is going to be my favorite. I just love them. I know they render very soft images, nothing that's really going to blow your mind, but I just love a simple manual focus camera that I can let get beat up. And yeah, so for me, it's going to be a Canon AE1, a Pentax K1000, a Nikon F3 that I may or may not have recently picked up. But yeah, just a traditional 35 millimeter SLR for me. Did you go to photography school, or are you planning to? No, I did not. I went to university for 4 years to study world religions, actually. So no photography school. For me, it's always been friends who were willing to help me out, who I looked up to. And I just had the guts to ask them the question, and they were always so gracious and patient with me. Or a ton of forums or YouTube videos. So I did my best to put the work in to learn, and had a ton of help from gracious friends. So no photography school for me, and I'm definitely not planning to go back to school ever. How did you get into film photography? Long story short, I was going on a trip to Iceland, and my photo mentor and one of my just insanely close friends who I look up to a ton, his name is Ben Finch. I'm actually planning to do a video with him very soon. But Ben is a commercial photographer who's incredibly successful, has always been so kind to help me out, and he shoots film for weddings, and so he has a multitude of just insane film cameras. He found out that I was going to Iceland and told me that he would let me borrow his Contax T2. And so I had no idea at the time what he was letting me borrow, but I ordered a 5-pack of Portra 400 on his recommendation, and I think I had a roll of Tri-X and HP5. So I went to Iceland for 10 days on a commercial project with all my digital gear, and just had this little Contax T2 with 7 rolls of film for a 10-day trip. Shot all the rolls, got back home, looked at the scans. A ton of my photos were absolute garbage because I didn't know the right light to shoot. I didn't even know how to work the camera hardly, but I just fell in love with it. And I came home from that trip, gave Ben the Contax back, and immediately purchased a Canon AE1 off of Craigslist, and the rest was history. So big shout out to Ben. But yeah, my first experience shooting film was in Iceland, which is an insane place to take photos, and was on one of the best 35 millimeter point and shoots that money can buy. So I kind of started out strong, and haven't looked back since, and don't plan on ever looking back. Which camera would you recommend to get started with film photography? I get this question all the time in my Instagram DMs, which is totally fine. I love getting the question, but my answer is always the same. It's going to be a Canon AE1 or a Pentax K1000. There's a few reasons why I recommend them. The first being because they're accessible. No matter where you live, I'm pretty sure you can probably find a K1000 or an AE1 on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or anywhere where you can find used cameras. The second reason being they're just incredibly friendly from an educational perspective. The ergonomics are very simple. They have light meters in them. They have traditional dials, and it's just a great first experience. And lastly, they take good photos. I think you can make great photos with a Canon AE1. I've made photos that I treasure and love deeply with my Canon AE1. I've had 3 or 4 of them. So yeah, Canon AE1, Pentax K1000, any 35 millimeter camera that is less than $100, I think I would say is a good start. What sort of adjustments do you do, if any, to your scans? I get this question a good bit too. I don't do a lot. I don't care if you adjust your film like crazy. That's your call. It doesn't bother me, and I would never waste my energy getting upset at how somebody else does that. But for me, I really just stay in those basic categories that you would see on your Lightroom panel. So exposure, I'm almost always hitting, whether it's even the very slightest. Very rarely do I ever get a scan back where the exposure is absolutely perfect. So I'm always going to bump the exposure or decrease it at least a little bit. Same for contrast. I'm always going to mess with the contrast. It's just the way it goes for me. I've gone through a phase the last 2 years where I've been really over contrast, so I'm always taking the contrast way down, but recently I'm taking the contrast up because I'm looking for a little bit of contrast in my images. But yeah, always doing the contrast. Highlights and shadows is the same thing. I'm usually always going, you know, the antithesis on each one. So if my shadows are going up, a lot of times I'll take my highlights down, or vice versa. Sometimes I take them both up, who knows, but I'm always messing with the highlights and shadows as well. Temperature, saturation, vibrance, all of those things, same deal. You know, I'm not trying to crush them, but I think it's safe to say that on all my scans, I'm adjusting the temperature and saturation at least, you know, +5, -5, +6, -8, somewhere in there. Not getting too nuts with it, but yeah, for all of the major categories, whether it's exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, temperature, saturation, it's safe to say that I'm always going to be moving those at least +5, -5. Have you ever shot Fuji Industrial 100? Yes, I have. I actually just got to shoot it for the first time this summer because a friend blessed me with a roll. So that was super sick. And yeah, I didn't notice anything too crazy about it, but it was really cool just to shoot it. For those of you who don't know, Fuji Industrial can only be purchased in Japan, like on the ground there. Like I don't even think you can order it from the internet. I'm sure you could find it if you wanted to because you can buy anything on the internet, but most of the time it's pretty hard to get a hold of. But I did shoot it this summer and I actually shot it during an insane sunset. And so it was a good time to test it out, and I wouldn't go out of my way to buy it, but if you do have the chance to shoot it, it's fun just to see the packaging with the Japanese characters and stuff. So yeah, Fuji Industrial 100, very cool. Do you think every photographer should try each film format at least once? I think should is strong because I don't know if you should, but I think it's a valuable experience. I think you learn so much when you shoot different types of format. I'm actually incredibly limited in this way. I've only shot 35mm and medium format 120, so I've never shot any large format, whether it was 4x5 or 8x10 or even 16x9. So I would love to, and I'm sure I would learn a ton about photography from that different perspective. Yeah, if you can try them all and money's not a factor, then for sure. And I think you would learn a lot, but I don't think it's necessarily necessary by any means. How do you get big views on your YouTube channel? I don't know. Ask Willem Verbeek, not me. Do you have a favorite photo that you have ever taken? Yeah, that's actually a really easy question. I'll put it right here on the screen. So yeah, bar none, that's the best photo I've ever taken or seen for that matter. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, to celebrate hitting 10,000 subscribers, I am going to be giving away this Olympus stylus. To enter, all you have to do is pretty simple, is to go and follow me on Instagram, and 2, leave a comment down below on this video with your Instagram handle. I will then pick a winner and I will go to your Instagram handle from your comment, and I'll make sure that you're following me by seeing the follow back on your account, and then I'll DM you and let you know that you won. I'm also planning on including a couple rolls of Kodak film to get you started with the Olympus stylus. Whether you live in the US or not, if you are international, don't worry, still feel free to enter. I'll ship it to wherever it needs to go if you are chosen as the winner. This camera is an absolutely amazing 35mm point and shoot. I did hesitate to give it away, but somebody deserves it for all the love and support that you guys have shown me. So it's a bummer to get rid of it, but I hope it goes to a good home. So I look forward to seeing which one of you guys wins the camera. Like I said one last time, thank you guys so much for all of the support and all of the love that you've shown on the channel. I still can't even believe that I have a channel based around film photography, and I could never say thank you guys enough. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. That really lets me know that you guys are enjoying all of the work that I'm putting into this. You can also follow me on Instagram here to keep up with new photos that I'm sharing throughout the week, as well as seeing all the videos that we have coming up on the channel here. So until next time.